Hey Homeworthy, welcome to Augusta, Georgia. I'm Lauren Robbins and I can't wait to show you my home.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
My name's Lauren Robbins and I'm the owner of Lauren Robbins Interiors here in Augusta, Georgia. I would describe my home as a warm, colorful cottage. So we found this house actually by accident. We weren't really even looking. We had a beautiful Tudor home that we'd been in for over 5 years, and one day my husband and I just happened to pop in just to kind of get a sense of, what could happen with this house. It was definitely a house that needed a lot of love and attention, and it was definitely going to be a big undertaking. And we walked in and most people couldn't see it, but I could see that the bones were there and it had so much potential. And we both looked at each other and looked at the size and the backyard and the location and realized it was a home that we had to take on and really make into our family home. Welcome to my entryway. This is one of the reasons that my husband and I decided to buy our home. I loved how open and bright it felt, and I knew that it was just a really warm and welcoming space that we could have a lot of people over when we were entertaining. One of my favorite features of the entry are these painted floors, which actually was a happy accident. We were in the middle of renovations and these floors were in really bad shape, and my husband was like, we're not replacing them. And so we had to come up with a creative solution. So I decided to have them painted by an artist who came from Atlanta. And what we did is we pulled in one of the darker tones that came off of the dining room and the lighter tone, which was off of our living room, kind of pulled those two rooms together and did this really fun diamond pattern, which I love. It feels really classic and updated, but also helps keep the entry feeling really bright. I love my entry because it's a collection of really wonderful just pieces that I've kind of collected all throughout my years as an interior designer and just throughout my travels as well. I found this really wonderful oversized urn at an antique sale, and a friend of mine who I was shopping with was like, you've got to get that. And I was like, what am I gonna do with this thing? It's huge. Like, I didn't know where it was gonna fit, but it's become one of my favorite pieces. It's so unique and beautiful. And one day I'll put it on top of a table, but for now it stays there. This beautiful Wang Bishop lamp, she is one of my favorite lamp designers, has wonderful colors and shapes, and this kind of sets the tone for the rest of the house. Tortoise kind of popping in here and there everywhere. Love this beautiful chest from Mr. and Mrs. Howard that I really place in a lot of our clients' homes. On top of my chest, I think it's really important in the entryway to have things that mean a lot to you. Of course, I have little pictures of my family, my sweet daughter, in a place that's really special to our hearts at the beach in North Carolina. I found this really odd and funky Murano glass porcupine. My husband doesn't get it why I have this in our entry, but I found it and I kept doing laps around this vendor stall, and it still was there, and I knew that if it was there after a couple hours that it was meant to be mine. And so he's followed me from several different houses and has just become one of the staples. I love seeing him, and I think he's just interesting, and I've never seen anything like him before. And then I always love fresh flowers in an entry. My friend Lisa Alpag with Augusta Studios out of New Orleans does these amazing ceramic bowls, and so I've used a lot of her pieces for decor. I've got a candlestick of hers, but also use her pieces for floral arrangements as well, which makes me so happy. I'm going to take you over here to another part of our entry, and this is not only something that's really interesting and beautiful, this antique umbrella stand that I won at an auction, but it's actually very functional. It holds canes. These were actually my husband's grandmother's canes that we've kind of collected and inherited over the years, and then our umbrella when we're kind of out the door. But then these beautiful pieces of art. I love figurative pieces, and I just feel like they're moody and beautiful and kind of sets the tone for this really serene space right off of our entry. This piece of Telluride, Colorado, it's a really special place for my family and I. We visit there every year, and this is what we see every time we pull into town. It's in a beautiful box canyon, and I had a friend of mine, Elaine Burge, who's an artist, do this commission for me because it just brought so much joy to us, and I loved it. She really incorporated like fabrics into the painting, which she was like, I wanted to do that because like you work with fabrics every day and this is like your love. And it just makes me so happy because this is a place where my husband and I started dating out here. We bring our family, we've taught our kids to ski out here, and it's a place that we really love to visit. So welcome to our family room. This is the room where we spend most of our time in our house. Originally, those doors were the exterior doors for our home. And when John and I first looked at the house, they led to a small sunroom. And that was really the only family room that was in this house. And what we realized was there was so much potential for us to really pop back, expand the family room, add another porch, and really connect it to the kitchen. And so that was one of the things that we did in our renovation. Something that's really important to me was making sure that our family room and our kitchen were able to speak to one another. We're all constantly doing homework, cooking, entertaining, and everyone's kind of within these two spaces. So we really wanted to make sure there was this cohesive feel between the spaces. Green is my favorite color, and so this room is quite saturated with green. I've got these performance velvet sofas that look good but can also withstand the wear and tear of children, with some of our favorite Hazelton House fabrics. I love the mix of a really beautiful traditional floral with more of a little modern animal print kind of mixed in everywhere. Once again, I encourage all of my clients to have art in their homes. I love art in my home from travels. This little wall over here is one of my favorite walls. This was a piece, the top piece was a piece that I got when I was visiting San Miguel in Mexico, and I found it at this little art stand, and I didn't end up buying it, but actually my mother-in-law surprised me and gave it to me one Christmas. And I'd had this beautiful portrait of, I don't know who she is, she just really spoke to me and she felt really beautiful and her colors were beautiful, but the two pieces worked really well together. So I had my framer actually use the fabric that's on the seat of this chair as the background for the art, so that way it kind of made this really beautiful collected space that all tied together, beautiful colors, but the stripe you can see at the bottom and the top of this kind of little collection, which I love. But my favorite piece in this room is this piece that my dad did. He is an abstract painter in Charlotte, North Carolina, and he pulled this out of his studio one day, and I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. I'm taking this. And so I stole it from him. Sorry, Dad, thank you. And really used it as part of the color collection in this room and did a little plate wall around it just to bring in more of a traditional nod to the space. So originally this room was white and I loved it for a couple of years, but thought that it just felt a little stark and not really warm. So I recently grass clothed the walls of this room and painted the ceiling a beautiful blue. It's hard to kind of tell in this light now, but it's the blue that's in these lampshades, just to kind of make it feel a little warm and intimate. And as soon as we did, the grass cloth really gave it this room almost like a wood paneled feel. It feels really warm and cozy and inviting. It doesn't hurt that we also have a fireplace on during these winter months. But the grass cloth is this beautiful old school traditional grass cloth that just really kind of warmed and cozied up the space. We did do custom lampshades on these lamps, and basically what I did is I got the fabric that's on the counter stools in my kitchen and had it pleated so that the two rooms really spoke to one another. Like these two spaces are really close to one another, and so by pleating the lampshade fabric, it still lends itself to the fabric that's on the counter stools, but it has a really different feel and feels almost like an updated stripe, which we've really loved. So that was a fun little find. My back console, this is really kind of a nice little separation space between the family room and the kitchen. It has a collection, once again, of some of my favorite things. I love going through antique stores and finding little finds like this really great like vintage ashtray. I just think it had really beautiful colors and was so interesting. Always have a little vase around so you can pop in flowers kind of at a moment's notice. But this little space is really great. And we tucked these awesome antique footstools, which have been great, especially when friends are over. We pull these out. They're really close, but also can be tucked away if you don't have enough space during our regular, 9 to 5 lives. So My personal style is very collected. Everything that I have in my home has meaning and is something that I've taken from trips or I've collected in estate sales or antique sales. And I really love having all these beautiful layers in my home. My style that I use in my house and also with my clients is a mix, is more of a transitional design. So I love mixing darker antique furniture, pieces that you've collected from a grandmother or have inherited, and mixing it with modern art and really updated modern pieces. And now I want to take you into our kitchen. So our kitchen was one of those rooms that we knew we really needed it to be a lot bigger and really open. There were a few things that I definitely knew I wanted. I wanted a big window that looked outside so I could see the kids playing in the backyard. I wanted it to connect to our family room so I could see what was happening in day-to-day life, being able to help someone with homework, being able to help someone if they were playing a game or watching a show. So when we originally bought the house, the kitchen ended right about here. It was a narrow galley kitchen and just didn't really have space for a family of 5. And so what we wanted to do was we popped everything out and made it really feel cohesive with the family room. My inspiration for the kitchen is kind of an English cottage vibe. Like, I love the darker soapstone that we chose. It hides dirt, but it also, I don't have to be precious with it, which with kids and who love to cook and we love to cook, sometimes that's just like the natural progression of things. We also did really beautiful furniture detailing on the cabinetry, which makes it feel more cozy and more cottagey. And so that was really something that I wanted to evoke with the antique brass and just these English light fixtures as well, which are really fun. They're on a pulley system, which is so great. And my kids had a really fun time playing with those when we first got them. All of our cabinetry was custom designed by my team and made from a firm here in Louisville, like right outside of Augusta in Louisville, Georgia. And they worked with me and we just had a really fun time designing these cabinets. So I wanted it to be really functional for our family and how we live in our space. So our breakfast nook is one of the spaces that we use all the time. We eat breakfast and dinner here. And this is the space that I knew had to be beautiful because it was part of the main part of our house, but also has to be super functional with young children. This is a wonderful quadrilles fabric that I actually had vinylized. So everything just wipes right off. And then the fabric on the seats are is an indoor-outdoor fabric that I can clean as well. These are these amazing French prints that I actually had in my shop. And they sat there for years and years and years and no one bought them. And I just thought they were so wonderful. They're of all the zodiac, not all of the zodiac signs, but of the zodiac signs. And I just think that they have this beautiful blue color, which ties into the counter stools and it's really, really kind of a fun little nod. And our kids love finding like which sign they are on the prints as well and kind of noticing all the details of the art. Moving over here, I won this really beautiful hutch at an auction and got it for a steal. And I thought it was going to be something that I was going to put into a client's home, but it ended up working really beautifully in our home. And I love it. It's just this beautiful piece of storage that's been able to display my plates. We use this Vietri, which was actually founded by someone from my husband's hometown. And so I love being able to kind of have a nod to John's hometown in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, with her plates on display. I do love incorporating a piece. We have so much cabinetry in our kitchen. I love incorporating like a freestanding piece of furniture, just so it doesn't feel, it feels a little more collected in your home. So right off of our kitchen, we have our mudroom, and this is a room that gets a lot of love in our household. But one of the most fun features of this room is the bench seats that my husband and I designed this room around. These bench seats are from the original basketball stadium at the University of North Carolina, and we are big Tar Heel fans, and so this was super cool. These were the seats from Carmichael Stadium, and so we built our kids' cubbies around them, and we just absolutely love them. They've book bags sit here, kids sit here to take shoes on and off, and it's just been a really fun little feature of our home and adds a little bit of character to our home state. So as you leave the mudroom, there you come into our back entry, and this is where we come in, day out, and I wanted it to look good, but it also had to be really functional because we're constantly carrying book bags and golf clubs and basketball shoes. And so we did this really beautiful Philip Jeffries vinyl grass cloth, easy to wipe down and can kind of take the wear and tear of daily life. But I also wanted our entry to be welcoming, kind of feel like my children and have a lot of personality. And so one of my dear friends, Natalie Thompson, took these personality portraits of my children, and it just really encompasses just everything that they love to do, from art to basketball to guitar, and it just really reflects their personalities. And I love walking into our entry every day and seeing these pictures of them and really like how it reflects their little personalities. My journey into interior design actually happened by accident. I was in the event industry for a really long time in New York City, and then when my husband and I moved to Augusta, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And after having my first child, friends started asking me for their help with getting pillows together or maybe helping them pick out lighting for their home. And slowly but surely, I just happened to have more and more clients, and it really formed a business. And now we are a 6-person team here in Augusta, and loving doing our take on traditional design. So now we're gonna go through the breakfast nook into the bar. And the bar was originally more of like a silver pantry, something that was kind of a room that had a lot of unused space. So we reflipped everything. It's a little dark in here, but it's a beautiful space that's really a collection of a lot of our more fun, funky pieces of art. I feel like this feels like a little bit of a speakeasy in here. My husband is a really big music fan. My parents both grew up in New Orleans, and we love how this room and all of the artwork in the room really reflects our love of the town of New Orleans and music. So this bar is a wonderful transition between our kitchen and our dining room. It's a great space. I really feel like whenever we're entertaining, a lot of people end up in here. It becomes like a really cozy spot where you can't even access sometimes, but it makes me really happy because it feels really warm and intimate. As you transition from the bar, the next room is our dining room, and this was a room that I originally kind of left unfinished. I didn't know what I wanted to do after we finished our renovation in 2022. And I knew that whatever wallpaper I chose, I wanted it to be right. And I finally went ahead and wallpapered this room, and I'm absolutely in love with it. It feels old and eclectic, but it's a cravat wallpaper that just is really whimsical. There's a lot of wall space in this dining room. The dining room's not big, but the wall space is there. And so I knew I wanted some sort of scene, but I didn't want anything super traditional. And I wanted something that probably not a lot of people would choose, and felt really whimsical. And so this wallpaper kind of hit the nail on the head in that regard. It almost feels like it's like a plaster with like the old kind of terracotta feeling painting, but I absolutely love it. It's made me so happy, and it's really kind of completed the room. This beautiful Biedermeier piece is one of my favorite pieces, and a piece that I inherited from my mother-in-law when she moved from her hometown to the beach. It was just a piece that was probably a little too formal for her house now, but I love it, and it's become just a piece that I remember it the first time I went to visit their house and seeing it in their formal living room, and it's a piece that I knew would be really beautiful in this room as well. So I always encourage my clients, if you have like a piece that has meaning or evokes certain memories, to incorporate them into their house. Like, we can find a way to make it more modern and feel updated in today's homes. These chairs are also antique chairs that were from my mother-in-law as well. More traditional Queen Anne chair, but the beautiful burl wood and these chairs is what, to me, makes them really special. They're just so clean and light, and they have just like brought me so much joy too. Even though they're kind of rickety, I just love them. I can't part with them. So one thing that I really encourage people to have in their homes is collections. And this happened kind of organically, but I started collecting vintage lighters. I found one, this set here, this Italian set, at an estate sale one time. And then I kind of got a reputation for wanting to collect them. And so friends would find them at estate sales and send me pictures and ask me if they wanted to pick it up, or I'd find one on an auctioneer site and buy a couple. And so it's been a really fun little thing for me whenever I'm traveling, similar to my art collections. If I find a vintage lighter, I collect it, and I'm probably up to about 14 right now. But I love this in the dining room, just in this beautiful antique display case. And it's just kind of a fun little thing to kind of, and a talking point when people come into the dining room. I also love just having this kind of happen randomly. I had this rattan basket that has and pedestal that was in my shop, and it just happened to fall here one day. And I think we were doing a photo shoot for something, and I've loved it because I can see this window whenever I pull into my driveway. And so during Christmas, I put my children's small Christmas tree with their ornaments on it, and I could see it pulling in. I'll cut things from my yard, and it's just a really happy reminder of like fresh greenery, and it just kind of adds a little bit more of a casual feel to this formal dining room, which I absolutely love as well. The lighting in this room was just something I knew I wanted, something a little funkier. I think that's where I tend to lead. A lot of times I love tradition, but I always want something that not everyone's gonna have, because I don't want my house to look like anyone else's. And so I really was like, okay, I've got this very traditional round table, Queen Anne dining chairs. How can I make it feel a little bit different? And so this beautiful plaster piece, it almost looks like it belongs at the beach, but it really has this like kind of fun, funky vibe that is a conversation piece, which I love as well. And then adding more light into this space are these beautiful sconces, and I just feel like they have this formal tone and picks up on the gold accents throughout the space as well. So actually the room that we're sitting in right now is my favorite room. This is the room that my family calls the pretty room. And it's just a room where I've kind of put all of my favorite things. I have my portraits of my children, a beautiful piece from my mother-in-law that I inherited. But my favorite piece, the one that's the most special to me, is the painting behind me that my children and my father did. He is an abstract artist, and one day they were playing around in his studio and started putting paints on canvas and stepping all over it, and it just really became a piece that I actually built the room around. So now we're coming into the living room, which my family affectionately calls the pretty room. But one of the things that I did with front rooms of the house were use these Forbes and Lomax switches. They just are really, really beautiful and have this beautiful brass detailing. Switches for on and off, and then you can do dimmer switches as well, but I feel like it has this old school aesthetic that I really wanted to portray in the house. As you move forward to the rest of the room, the painting over the sofa was actually my inspiration for the color palette in the room. This is a piece that my dad and my children did in his studio. As I mentioned, he is an abstract artist. He had a studio in our old home in Charlotte, and you know, sometimes when the children were bored, they just would go and play and make their own, you know, quote unquote mess. And I love this piece because you can see their little footprints. He had a canvas laid out on the floor, and all of a sudden people started taking paintbrushes and painting, and my dad and I looked at each other and we were like, oh my gosh, this is actually really good. And so we started to direct them a little bit, and I would hand my daughter a paintbrush with the end and put blue paint on it, and she would do the dots. And then one of my sons did the green, which we thought looked like grass. And so it was just so fun to kind of help them and let them play and explore, and it ended up being this really beautiful piece of art. And as soon as I got it framed, I realized, this is several years before we were done with the renovation, I realized that this was a piece that I could absolutely build a room around. And so I pulled the greens and blues for the sofa. It's a beautiful Highland House sofa with a Jane Churchill fabric that I had treated so my children could come and stay in the space. This beautiful floral is an antique, or is a clearance house, and it's a block printed clearance house fabric. And I just loved how it felt antique. It felt like it would be something that you would see in your grandmother's home. And this was actually a chair that came from my mother-in-law's house that I had recovered in this fabric, and it just is really special to me because I do, once again, remember her house having these beautiful chairs. I love the lines. They're big and cozy, but also have really feminine, like a skirt around the bottom. And I just love how this chair can really hold a large scale fabric. To us, our games are really important, whether we're playing chess or mahjong. We use this table quite often. And this is a piece that a friend of mine, actually one of my employees, was looking for some pieces for a client and knew I needed a game table, and found this piece, which I thought just fit perfectly here. And you can store, the top lifts up and you can store all the game pieces, and it can flip over to a backgammon set as well, which is great. Piano has become something that we have started to do in our house, and my daughter, I love how she plays piano every day and practices. I can hear it through my bedroom wall. And so this has become a fun little piece. It's got a little bit more of a mid-century modern vibe to it, which I really liked. And that was what we were looking for. So at this point, this has been really fun. And we pulled that Clarence House fabric skirt into the seat of the piano bench, just to kind of make it feel a little more feminine and break up the wood against this wood antique chair. Mahjong, like I said, is one of my new favorite hobbies, and so I keep my Mahjong set on display, which of course I got in pink because it matched the rest of my pretty room. And then this was one of the finds. My husband makes fun of me because we have carried this throughout our homes probably since the beginning of our marriage, but I am a Tar Heel, and I loved this ram's head. Because that is our school mascot, and I found this at an antique sale and had to get it and just use it as a little table topper for whatever home we live in. So one of the things that pulls this room together is this Ushak rug, and Ushak rugs are something that I absolutely love. I probably have them in a majority of the rooms of my house, and I love this one in particular. It's got this beautiful pink salmon color, the rich reds and the blues, and you know, a lot of people kind of get a little nervous about Ushaks because they are, you know, they can be pricey, but they're natural material, they're wool, and so they're actually very easy to clean if you need to get a stain out of them. But what I love about them is that all of the patterns are so different, they're so unique, they bring in so much color and interest, and I think that, you know, the floor shouldn't be a space where you forget about. It should add color and life, and it should be something that draws your eye to it. And so I feel like Ushaks are one of my go-to pieces when I'm designing for my own home as well as my clients' homes. So I loved this fireplace. Originally when we moved into our house, all of the trim in this room and in the entry and in the dining room was a sage green. And I loved it. It felt very English, very cottagey, but it wasn't. I knew for this room I wanted to keep it bright and light and let the artwork and the rugs and the pattern really do the talking. So we kept everything in this fireplace original. I found these beautiful andirons at an estate sale, and I just thought they were so lovely and delicate. Usually andirons can kind of feel a little bit heavy and masculine, but I loved the floral filigree at the top, and I just thought that it was a beautiful complement to the flowers that we have in this space. I'm a big fan of a glass fireplace screen. My husband is not. He says that it doesn't let heat go through, but I kind of pull it aside. But it has a really clean finish, and what I do for a lot of my clients is cut the glass to size, and I found these brass bases, and that way you can have a fireplace screen for no matter what size fireplace you have. So once again, kind of pulling in my love of collections. I get my boys these julep cups every year for Christmas and for their birthdays, and they don't love them yet, but I think one day they will, or maybe their wives will. But then again, my lighter collection, these are some really fun lucite lighters that I found, and I just kind of place them around everywhere, and they're kind of fun little story pieces that kind of bring up for different topics of conversation. One of the things that is really important to me is having art, whether it's original art or prints. art to me just really makes a home feel really collected and tell a story. And one of the last pieces that I was waiting for in this room was this piece. I knew I needed something kind of spectacular because it's the piece that you see when you walk into the home and you're looking directly into this room. It really sets the tone for the room. And this is from a piece by Philip Morrisberger. He was a beloved artist out of Augusta, Georgia, who passed away several years ago. And I remember meeting with the team who sold his works after his passing and kind of wanting to get more information on this piece. And I remember they said that this was Philip here. So he did a lot of self-portraits in a lot of his pieces, or he would always show up in a lot of his pieces, which is really fun. But this was a picture of him and his wife. And it almost to me feels like he's having this daydream about her. And I love like her doe eyes and just like her soft kind of, she just kind of melts into the background of the piece. And when I saw it, I'd already had my pink curtains picked out. I knew I had the pinks and the yellows and the blues from the piece that my dad and the kids had done. And so when I saw it, I just thought, oh my gosh, I've got to have it. And so this piece brought me a lot of joy, and it also made me really happy to have a piece by him because he was so influential in the arts in the South, and he was one of those people who I'd met him a couple of times, and he was always such a gentleman and so sweet. And so I love having this piece as kind of the focal point in our living room. So I'm always traveling, and I'm always going to markets and estate sales and antique shows. And one of the pieces that I found that I thought, once again, we're going to go to a client, were these antique plate. I was with my team in High Point, where we go for our furniture market, and we saw these two plates, and I just thought they were so interesting. I'd never really seen anything like them. I loved like the oranges and the blues, and then of course like this pop of pink. And I thought, oh, surely I'll find a client who will use these. And so we brought them home. I didn't even think about them for my house, and I brought them home after market and was unpacking my car and realized how good these pieces looked in this room, and realized that I had just a sliver of wall space that I could use them in. And so I had these brackets that we sell in our shop that just fit perfectly, and realized that unfortunately no client was going to get them. They were going to stay with me. So those were fun little finds that sometimes things end up working for a client, but other times they end up living with me for a little bit. So one of my favorite home design tips is to buy art wherever you go. It's one of my favorite things that I tell my clients, and I encourage them to buy pieces, whether it's at a street vendor on the side of the road when you're traveling to a different country, or going to a local art fair. I think buying art really makes your home feel collected, and every time you pass it, it tells a story of a place that you've been or a wonderful memory that you have. So off of our entryway is our powder room, and I always love treating a powder room like a little jewel box. I feel like it should be a fun little surprise. This one actually is perfect because it's right underneath our stairwell, so it feels kind of enclosed and intimate. But we did this really wonderful Odaline wallpaper, greens and purples, and it just has this really rich color. We pulled the green into the trim in the ceiling and then in the cabinetry as well. And then I just happened to find this really fun piece of art that I felt was so fitting and kind of a little just fun, have good taste in art and better taste in people. Just a fun little reminder of a little life lesson. So this room is just a really fun room that just kind of came together and is a fun, whimsical surprise. So now we're coming into our master bedroom, and our bedroom is right off of our family room. And so it was really important for John and I to have privacy, but also be close. We wanted to be on the downstairs level. So we built this vestibule that has a pocket door and a closed door, and also made our walls really thick and insulated. So that way we wouldn't hear the sound from the family room if anyone wanted to go to bed a little earlier than everyone else. This room was originally part of the house. At one point it was an office, but it was really long and narrow and had an arched window that we didn't really love the architectural features of. So when we popped the rest of the family room and the kitchen back, we also decided to connect that portion or this office to the rest of the space. And we're able to widen the bedroom about 3 feet. And so this has just been a really nice space for us just to have it on the main level, be really close to what's happening with the rest of the house, and just, have this really wonderful sanctuary where we look out to our garden. Because we are on garden level, I wanted to pick out a fabric with flowers that felt like a garden. This is one of my favorites. It's a Cotton and Tout hydrangea fabric that just had these beautiful blues and greens. To me, I love color in so many other rooms of my house, but when I go to my bedroom, I really want it to feel soft and serene, and a place you can really just like relax. I feel like my brain can sometimes be working all the time, so I want my bedroom to feel like a really serene sanctuary. And so I keep everything really neutral and just add little pops of color here and there. We did green, once again being my favorite color. I took the green tones that I have throughout the rest of the house and really saturated it into this beautiful sage green, and painted the walls and the trim this color, and color matched the drapery panels in the Roman shades as well. So one of my favorite pieces in this room is this piece that my dad did in college. This is probably one of his earlier works that I have. And actually the funny thing is in our old family home in Charlotte, I went up into the attic one time and I found it rolled up. And it was something that he didn't even love. He didn't think was anything special. And to me, it just kind of felt like almost like an abstract version of like the world, like the earth. And I don't know, I just loved like the browns and the greens and the blues, and it just, I don't really know what it means or why I like it so much, but I think that the fact that he did it means a lot to me, but also like I love the softness and the colors of the piece. And so I pulled this into our bedroom because it kind of matched the tone and the feeling that I wanted to evoke in this room. Once again, when I'm working with florals and kind of leaning into more of a traditional room, I like to pull fabrics in from the bed into like a little chair. And so this is a chair that gets used often, whether we're reading or it just needs to be a place where I throw things, which ends up happening most of the time. I love this fabric, and I love how a great club chair can really show off a large scale floral print. Which I loved this Cotton. It's been one of my favorites for years. I also brought in these little beautiful butterflies. These are little hand-cut butterflies by one of my friends, Clarence Deaton. She's an artist out of Charlotte, and she and I went to college together, and she's been such a big fan of my work, and I've been such a big fan of her work, and it was such a fun thing. She sent me a picture one day when she started working on these neutral butterflies with the marbling behind them, and she was like, "What do you think?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've got to have them." And so I took some, sold some in my shop and put them in clients' homes, and they just are really make me happy, especially given that our room's right off of our garden, and I have a butterfly bush right outside of my window. I love the fact that we were able to pull the butterflies into the room as well. So one of the most unique pieces in this room is probably this Murano glass light fixture. Actually, this was a little bit of a happy accident as well. I had originally spec'd this piece from a vendor who finds pieces in Italy. I thought it had a down rod, and I thought it was going to be something that I would actually put in my dining room. But when I got the piece, I realized that it was only like a 12-inch drop versus like a 36-inch drop that I needed to make it into an actual chandelier. So I had to pivot and realize that it would actually be a really special piece to have in my bedroom. And as simple and as clean and serene as my bedroom is, this light fixture has also become like the statement piece. And I actually turned into a really happy surprise. So as we move from our bedroom into the master bathroom, this is kind of a fun little vestibule in an area where we had to work within the confines of the existing space. This was part of the existing of the original house, and this bathroom was a den at one point. And actually a funny story, when we first did our renovation, when we moved into the house in the summer of 2021, we decided to do the children's rooms upstairs first, because when we did the big renovation on the back of the house, I wanted them to have a space where they could go and feel comfortable in their room, because I knew there was going to be a lot of construction and a lot going on. And so while we were finishing the upstairs, all of us lived in this room. And it basically felt like summer camp. I had twin beds everywhere. The kids were jumping from one bed to the next. And it just ended up being a space that kind of brings back happy memories. Eventually this den got turned into our master bathroom. And so I had to work within the original footprint and the original layout of the space. So we put our cabinetry here. We had this window. So my husband's vanity and our vanities like flank the window. I was able to build a little vanity seat here. And then we turned our bathroom, an old fireplace was covered up and turned into our water closet. And then our shower we built out for the rest of the den as well. Okay, so now we're gonna head upstairs and see our kids' rooms. So now we're entering my daughter's room, and this was one of the rooms that we did at the very beginning of our renovation. We wanted the rooms to be reflective of each child's personality and really to be done while we were doing the rest of the renovation. So in my daughter's room, we picked this really fun, whimsical Luli Wallace fabric. She loved, at that time, she was out at like a nature school. She loved being outdoors and loved the beautiful florals out there. So we pulled that into her design with this beautiful scallop. The bedside tables are from Ballard Designs, which I work with often, and they've always been great fans and proponents of my work. And then this past Christmas, we got Eloise a record player, and we've just really loved music's a really big part of our family and everything we like to do as a family. And so all of the kids have little record players now and speakers, and so Taylor Swift is like on repeat whenever her friends come over, and so that's been a really kind of fun addition. It kind of makes her feel a little bit more grown up, and really loves having that. Another piece by Philip Morsberger, the artist that I mentioned, who's from Augusta. Not only did he do oils on canvas, but he also did these pastels on paper. And I just thought these were so fun and whimsical, and also had all the colors of her bedroom that I just had to kind of pick up a piece when they went for sale. So here we are in my son's room, and I loved this room from the minute that we walked into the house. It had this cabin feel, and what was so funny is my son mentioned to me one time that he wanted a fly fishing room, and I was like, okay, let's see if I can find some vintage fly fishing rods. It ended up that I got more into the vintage tennis rackets, which he actually has become quite the little tennis player, so it all feels very fitting. But I loved this room. I love the combination of Carolina blue and red, and then adding a pop of navy blue to kind of weight it. One way to make this wood paneling feel a little bit more modern was to paint the trim. I knew I would never paint this wood paneling, but I thought the trim painted just made it feel a little bit more updated, and really gave it a really cool, handsome vibe. The artwork in this corner of the room is all really special to us. My husband's grandfather grew up going to a small island in North Carolina called Durant Island. It's a hunting and fishing club that my husband's actually a member of now. And I happened to be at an antique map shop in Savannah and found a map that had Durant Island on it, which is like a small place. It was very hard to come by. And actually it pairs well with this watercolor that was his grandfather's as well, of Durant Island. And so I love having those two pieces together in that family history. And then I love this little Swanee, Tennessee. That's where my husband went to undergrad. And a friend of ours gave that to us at their wedding. They had prints made of Swanee when we were all together for their wedding. And I love that that's just kind of a part of all of my husband's history and family history as well. In this space, I love kind of having collections of things, a beautiful old antique chest with an updated lamp, and a fun mirror. I love playing with textures. When you're coming into a room, a lot of people ask about how do I make like an antique chest that I've inherited from a grandmother feel modern and updated. And I think really pairing it with like a beautiful clean lamp and fun accessories and an updated mirror can make an old piece feel really new again. And so this piece has been beautiful, been loved and worn, but it does the job, and it holds all my son's clothes, which is great. Once again, record music and record players are really big in our family. It's kind of fun to see what the kids are listening to through different series or different places in their lives. And so we've been loving getting them records and introducing them to new bands as well. So one of the things that's really important to me is incorporating art into my home. I happen to be really lucky that I have artists in the family. Not only is my dad an artist, but my grandfather also did a lot of artwork in his day. And my mom has had collection or pieces of his that we've incorporated into her home and to mine. And we found this piece in my grandmother's things. And it's just this beautiful scene of a little boy and his dog fishing. And, you know, it was in pretty bad shape when we found it, but I have a wonderful framer who really helped bring this piece back to life. And it's been one of my favorite little pieces to add to my son's art collections. My husband and I are not from Augusta, and it really made me really want our home to feel like a place where everyone wanted to gather. Nothing brings me more joy than having people over and letting people come and enjoy our home. And that's the whole beauty of why we bought this house and why we did this renovation, is to really make sure that people felt warm and welcome in our home.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.